Yo, what's going on, E7 fam? I'm Sue, and happy TGINW, my dudes. Thank goodness it's not Wednesday. And we have the September 25th balance adjustment preview to talk about today. So, who are we going to be talking about and covering in this video? It's going to be Maid Chloe, Little Queen Charlotte, Operator Sigret, Fumir, Command Model Laika, Tempest Surin, My Girl Commander Lorina, Researcher Carrot, Mercenary Helga, Silvertide Christie, and 2 artifacts. Draco Plate, which is Luna's limited artifact, and Unfading Memories, which is DN's limited artifact. Now, I will go over everything in this patch in detail as I normally do, but I am a little bit strapped for time due to things in my personal life. So, there won't be any fancy edits with like characters and bullet points and things you've come to expect. So instead, just put me on your headphones or throw me on your second monitor, and let's go over everything that is in this balance patch. So let's start with Maid Chloe. Maid Chloe has basically done it all at this point. Back in 2020 and 2021, she was one of the best aggro openers in the game due to the fact that she was one of the only full team attack buffs that also did other things like, say, revive or heal the team. So that made her super, super impactful. And then throughout the years, she's kind of shifted towards a more controlling turn 2 tank down effect resistance defining character. Like, she gives effect resistance to the entire team. That is probably not the case anymore. I mean, it hasn't been really good in a while, but there are some changes. So first is the S1. Maid Chloe will get an extra 15% combat radius when she uses her S1 in addition to the team-wide CR push whenever she lands a stun or hits a stunned target. So that's very good for tempo because it helps her get her S3 back faster, and she needs to kind of cycle her S3 as quickly as possible in order for her to actually maintain some level of relevance compared to other supports in the current state of the game. After that, we have a change to the S2 Mage Cheer. Extra healing, always going to be very, very good. This character already feels like it doesn't heal enough, so more obviously is going to be a welcome change. But they got rid of the effect resistance to all allies passive, so you no longer get a free 20% ER to everyone on your team. I would argue the replacement is a bit better. Yes, it sucks that she loses her like ER tank down identity, but she instead grants 50% additional damage reduction to all allies. This is the Fallen Cecilia half fixed damage passive. I cannot stress to you how good this is. Fallen Cecilia has been working overtime at this point because there's too much BS additional damage, fixed damage stuff in the game right now, and Fallen Cecilia is the only meaningful check to all of it. So having a second one means that your opponent can't just go, oh, I have second pick, I'm going to take Renak and Fallen Cecilia, haha, you can't really deal with it unless you race me. So that's off the table now. Really good to see. Synergizes very, very well with the turn 2 playstyle still anyway. Yes, you lose the 20 ER, but there are ways to get around that. We'll talk about that a little bit later because one of the artifacts might be a pretty decent option for you over Shamandra's Staff. And then finally, the S3 here, VIP treatment. Extra 10% health on revival, so 30% instead of 20%. That's good. Changing the attack buff to defense buff, also good because Maid Chloe, again, has not really been an aggro opener for like 4 to 4.5 years at this point. She has been solidly turn 2 tank down for several years at this point. Like KHM and so many other players have played this character historically as defensive. Everybody basically plays her alongside a Crimson Armament. And Crimson Armament's back now, so no reason not to just double down on the turn 2 playstyle. Change the attack buff to defensive buff. Great change. Cooldown on the S3, 4 turns instead of 5. Excellent change. Again, character really struggles if she can't cycle that S3 in a meaningful time period. And I don't really think this like kind of breaks the bank, but it is, I think, exactly what she actually needed. And then lastly, we have a change in the constellation from her zodiac sign Virgo to Gemini, which is DN/Amelia's zodiac sign. It's kind of a push. It doesn't really mean a whole hell of a lot to me that we got this change. Like it's fine. Like it's a fine change. The big change here, the one that we should be focusing on, is the half fixed damage passive and the lower cooldown on the S3. These are really, really big changes. A defense buff on the S3, big changes. Very, very good set of changes here for Maid Chloe. What's not a good set of changes, I feel like, though, is Operator Sigret. So Operator Sigret has had a buff being teased for 9 months at this point, and she has just been in an absolutely dreadful state. She has a DPS that is meant to punish teams that play a lot of barriers. The problem is that she's super squishy, has absolute garbage base attack. It's just hard for her to do her job. You just have to be substantially faster than your opponent, and even then, because of her crappy base stats, sometimes you just don't even kill on the S2, like, which is the main reason that you're playing her for. So, to compensate for this, the change that she gets an attack buff before using her S2 now, which is good, but the base damage was decreased, which was bad. But it now penetrates 100% defense, up from 50%, you know, defense pen. So that's good. And you get extra damage when you target a barrier, which is probably also good. So it's probably like a net gain, but it depends. Like, how much extra damage do I get on the barrier, right? Because if it's like Specimen says, where like, I could have like 2,000 attack and then use Light Storm on a stunned unit, and it'll still kill like a tank, because the move just gets so much free bonus damage versus a stunned unit that it doesn't matter. You're just killing it. So that way I can afford to build speed or bulk or any a number of other stats that I want to build on the character, right? So if we make it so that like I can play like 2,000 attack on Opsig and Annihilation will still kill a tank, then yeah, that's great, because then I could build Opsig at like 270, 280, 290 speed and actually realistically make her do her job. But if we can't, it's like kind of a push. Like, it's, what are we doing here? It doesn't really change anything. They also changed the S3. It now pushes back the enemy team an extra 10% combat readiness. The base damage was increased, largely to kind of compensate for the loss of the damage dealt increases proportional to caster's speed. That clause was removed, and we're kind of, I guess, just slapping in that little bit of extra damage that you would have got into the base damage. It's fine. Soulburn now increases damage dealt instead of just extending the attack buff duration on the S3. That's also a fine change. But I just don't think at the end of the day this changes anything really for the character. It might. Again, it's all hinges on this sentence. When the target is granted a barrier, increases damage dealt. This bonus determines whether or not this is a good buff. Because fundamentally, this character is still the same. It just, that damage better be massive, so that way I can kind of cover my spread of weaknesses in other ways. Next up is Little Queen Charlotte, a character that is very near and dear to my heart. If you guys don't know, if you're newer to the channel or you haven't been following me since the beginning, my How to Play series was kind of the thing that kind of brought me to prominence, and Little Queen Charlotte was the first first How to Play video, excuse me, I got tongue-tied. First How to Play video that people actually recognized and really enjoyed of mine. So, yeah, like, this is kind of the character that put me on the map, the one that, you know, made me famous, so to speak. So, obviously, I'm very grateful to her, and she holds a special place in my heart. And she hasn't been very good for a long time, let's put it that way. She was a very slow bruiser, played on Hellcutter. Kind of fell by the wayside eventually. Then they tried to spruce her up a bit so that way you could play her as like a cleaver. That was good for like a couple months, but yeah, hasn't been good in a bit. So what they decided to do is they reworked her passive, A Queen's Dignity, and I gotta say, it's really good. Because in the past, it used to be a plus 27 adamant shield, and if you hit her with a crit, she would get a small combat readiness boost of 15%. Now, she is completely immune to debuffs which prevent movement. So one of the popular ways to deal with the character was just sleep or stun her. Well, nope, she's got the Mort passive, so you can't do that anymore. You can't stop her from, you know, dropping the nuke on you, on dunking you. Can't stop her anymore unless you just outright kill her, which is going to be difficult because instead of getting the extra critical hit damage reduction, it is just now straight up 20% damage reduction from all sources when an ally is attacked. Which is like, holy, it's so good. So it doesn't get rid of fixed damage because that's not based off an attack. But any attack, straight up 20% damage reduction. That's just insane. That's like a Crimson Armament security state. And there's a lot of DPS, so you can just play her alongside of a tank. She's going to make your team just insanely tanky on top of being hard to control. And then you see here, after every attack suffered by an ally, increases the combat readiness of the caster by 10%. So no matter who gets hit, LQC is getting a 10% combat readiness boost. Just this right here, insane passive change. I think this character is going to be super, super good. I am all here for it. Characters that are immune to some type of debuff are always at least somewhat relevant, even as pocket picks. Obviously, Mort is the best example, but like Bystander Hua Young, Sylvan Sage Vivian, these characters are effectively immune to some or all debuffs some of the time. and that's what makes them strong counter picks. LQC has always been a really good pocket pick. I just think being an off tank, being immune to certain types of CC, and then having that extra CR push, very, very strong. The Will of the Mare, her S3, now does AoE splash damage no matter which element she hits as opposed to dark elements. It still does bonus damage to dark elements, so she still got her niche intact. And then they changed her soul burn, which it's a bit worse now. It used to be 20 souls extra turn, so you could just go S3 and then go right into her S1 Judgment for big damage. Can't do that anymore. Instead, 10 souls lowers the cooldown of the Will of the Mare, so you could kind of cycle it every other turn, kind of keep throwing it out there. Overall, amazing set of changes. This is probably my most favorite set of changes in the entire patch, and I'm super, super here for it. Next up is Fumir, and Fumir got pretty much like a total rework, I feel like, at this point, which kind of sucks because she was a really cool character in terms of design. You would play her with 2 red, 2 green characters in a draft, put her under ban protection, and you would get this like really cool wombo combo where essentially once she got to her first turn and did an action, she would use what I like to call the Thanos snap, which is her Fruit of Knowledge. It's a non-contact skill that strips all buffs, 2-turn sleep, 2-turn defense break. And from there, you can kind of just pick and choose how you want to win the game. It's pretty much impossible for your opponent to win at that point. That's why I call it the Thanos snap, because it kind of just snaps them out of existence. They're just gone. Yeah, it was a really cool style, a really interesting way to play the game, because you got a uniquely powerful effect. I know people would hate playing against it, but it was very powerful for having some very creative team building. But it also wasn't very good at high level. There's like one legend player who would actually end up using it. And then you have like the homie Grills plays it as a meme every once in a while. But otherwise, like it's not really super great. So yeah, the goal of these balance adjustments is to actually help out characters with low usage rates. Fumir very obviously would, qualify for that. So making her into kind of a more generic use control character is, I think, a good thing. Even though we as a player base like are worse off for it because we lose a cool character design, these changes I'm about to talk about I think are good for the character, and I think do massively increase her usage rate. She will be very strong after these changes. So what are we talking about here? So S1 no longer attack down, instead gives 15% combat readiness to the next highest CR person that is not Fumir on the team. Then the S2, no longer need a red and a green character alongside of Fumir to get the Elemental Inquiry to go for the Thanos snap. Instead, she is now a focus character, and you get 1 focus at the start of your turn, or the start of the game for each different color on your team. So if you have 4 different colors, she starts with 4 focus. At the start of the turn, she will gain 1 focus, and then after she does her attack, if her focus is full, she would consume all of it to go for Fruit of Knowledge, aka the Thanos snap, which is still pretty much entirely intact. Very, very good, because now you can basically just say, hey, I could just draft a team of multicolors, like 4 of each color, and I am super good to go. I can slam this character as a 4th or 5th pick, and she's going to be very, very strong, very, very hard for my opponent to deal with. They're going to basically have to force ban her or play through this very, very powerful control mage, which, that's good. We just gave her like a really strong niche just as a very powerful pocket pick, very powerful counter pick at the end of the draft. I like that. S3 also got completely reworked. It used to be a decreased buff duration single target attack that would also deal an extra 3,000 fixed damage to the target based on the number of times the move is used. So first one's 3,000, then 6,000, then 9,000. Now it is a 2 buff dispel single target move that also pushes the skill cooldowns back of the target by 1 turn. So it's a little bit more of a controlly aspect, and also gives them an extra 10% CR pushback. I forgot to mention that in the first part. It was 30% before pushback on this 3. Now it is 40%. And then you get 2,000 fixed damage based on the amount of focus. And if you've played everything correctly, she should have 5 focus on her first turn. And therefore you get basically a Rimuru Tempest S3. So it's like, I strip 2 buffs, I push cooldowns back, and then, by the way, hold this Rimuru S3. Very, very strong S3. And honestly, kind of deserved, because the character's S3 was not particularly very good in its previous state. So now it makes it feel like an actual ultimate. And that is very, very good. And then the last 2 changes here, which are very, very major. Soulburn effect grants an extra turn for 20 souls. She is a mage. You were already holding Book on her or Umbral Keystones for the most part. Now this solidly, I think, makes Book like her best option. So you could kind of Soulburn, even if you only have you know, 3 colors. You'll start with 3 focus. You'll take your first turn, go to 4. You can soul burn the sensory dissection, get 8k fixed damage, and then start your next turn S1, and then that will proc the fruit of knowledge, and then, you know, you get the snap, and then kind of execute your game plan from there. So very, very strong. And then also constellation change to Pisces. So we were Taurus, which was Blue Aria stat line. We are now Pisces, which is Festive Eda stat line, which is got less effectiveness, right? But it also has 5 more base speed and a ton more bulk. So yeah, Fumir was already reasonably bulky. Now she's going to be even tankier, even faster, which is perfect for her very like aggro, cleave, control centric gameplay style. So overall, really good changes with Fumir. I'm very happy with this. Yes, we lost a cool character design. Yes, we lost a meme of a character. But instead, what we got is a really powerful, almost borderline toxic character that has defined weaknesses because of that focus mechanic. She'll lose to Solitaria, she'll lose to Sea Phantom Politis, and of course she still has her old weaknesses like Selene, your Dragon Kingster, and so on and so forth. Very, very strong character post changes in my opinion. Next we have Command Model Leica. Only one change to the base kit. The S2, which is the dual attack that gives target, right? That now, instead of giving attack buff to the person that you dual attack from, that dual attack target, that recipient, will get a greater attack buff now, which is very, very good for things like Trial of the Constellations. Command Model Leica is used on the green Trial of Constellations from time to time. So this makes things like her have better synergy with characters like Charles or Violet or Valen or so on and so forth. Like whoever you decide to play with that. I don't think it really has much PvP applications, but it does make the character significantly better in the PvE spots that she's already good in. And then we got 2 changes to our exclusive equipment. Now, they made it so that her S2, instead of just decreasing the buff durations of the target by 1 turn, it is now a full dispel on the S2, which is more in line with like Architect Leica. So that way you kind of don't have to deal with immunity that's stopping you from going for big damage. It's cool, cute, it's not super amazing. And then the last one is the one that she honestly should have had all along. It changes the S3 Volley Fire. Instead of being bonus damage on the 3rd EE, you now get decreases buff durations of the target by 1 turn before you apply any of your debuffs. Basically, the #1 complaint that people used to have with Green Leica is that she couldn't strip with her opening move. And I honestly defended that decision because I thought it made her balanced at the time. Now in 2025, it wouldn't be enough, but hey, here we are like 4 years later. If you wanted a strip on the S3 for Command Model Leica, you finally got it with the exclusive equipment. I don't really think this changes her ladder usage in PvP. But if Lunatic Draft is still a thing in games 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth of a set, this is a monstrously huge change for the people that actually do have the gear to make a blazing fast Leica cleave. Next is Tempest Surin. Tempest Surin now will gain the Vampirism buff in addition to Stealth whenever she procs her passive, which means that you no longer need to build the character on Lifesteal set, which means you can play her on Speed, so she's much better as an anti-cleave character. You can play her on Destruction, so she has a much better general use DPS. All good changes. Only other changes here are on the S3, and that is that the unbuffable on the S3 is now 100% chance as opposed to 85%, and they increase the base damage. One last thing, they changed the exclusive equipment #1. It used to give lifesteal on the S1. We don't need that anymore because of the vampirism change. So instead, they changed it so the chance of bleeding on the S1 is increased, which is super good for Challenge Abyss. There are a couple of floors, like 1 or 2 floors, where Tempest Surin is like kind of the preferred option for stacking up debuffs because you need bleeds, burns, or poisons. And she's one of the very best, if not the best at doing it, but it's a bit RNG, a bit inconsistent. So giving her that exclusive equipment, I think, is an overall good change. Speaking of Abyss, next character is my girl, Commander LORINA, the girl you can't replace, the girl that I love, the girl that you all try to keep making work in red lobbies and ratios, and your prayer might actually be answered because the changes that LORINA is gonna be getting are kind of wild. I don't know if this wrecks her PvE usage at all. I hope it doesn't, because if not, I'm gonna have to remake like, I don't know, 50 Abyss videos. That's not going to feel super good. So I'm praying that her PvE usage is still intact, but they seem to be trying to put the character into kind of like a PvP slant. So let's see what they gave Commander LORINA. So first up, Spiritual Armament. This passive here increases the effect resistance of the character by 50%. Doesn't seem like much. That's fine. Resolve, her S3, right? Or Spiral Breakthrough if you're on the Commander LORINA variant. It now has its damage type changed. It used to deal damage proportional to target's lost health. It now deals increased damage proportional to the target's max health. So it's going to do even more damage versus bosses when you use it early. So that's a pretty interesting change. So then we have a bunch of changes on the character's runes. She will get an extra 10% dual attack chance from the Unity rune, bringing her total up to 15% base dual attack chance. And it's going to go even higher. Just bear with me here. So she's already up to, off the Unity rune, 15% base chance. Courage rune is going to give her an extra 18% base attack, bringing it up to a total of 20% extra base attack, which is pretty insane because this character already has like 1280 base attack as a freaking 3-star. Like, this character is going to end up having like Red Sirmia level attack when all is said and done. After that, Guard rune. It used to give an extra 5% defense every time you took in dealt an attack, up to a maximum of 25% extra defense. That's gone. Instead, when LORINA has over 200% effect resistance, damage suffered in one attack does not exceed 35% of max health when attacked. Essentially, it turns her into a Galililius that you cannot strip the buff, you cannot hit them with unbuffable, you cannot seal it because it is not a passive, it is a rune that gives that to her. So that's going to be super, super annoying to play against if you're using her at all in PvP. And it also gives her just a ton of survivability in various different PvE modes if you can actually pull off the 200% effect resistance on the character. After that, we have a change to the Sun rune, an extra 8% increased damage to the S1 Sharp Blow. We take those. Hail rune gives an extra 15% dual attack chance now, bringing her to, I believe, the cap of 30% dual attack chance. She's going to max dual attack chance. So, like, basically 1 in every 3 attacks, she's going to be dueling. Don't play the character in the liner at Sirmia, but man, she is just going to be doing all kinds of just S1 damages, stacking up that spiritual armament. It's going to be really, really fun to see. After that, we have a change to the Thorn rune. Thorn rune used to give you a 20% chance to reset the S3 if it got a kill. Cool. Never really mattered except just getting an extra little bit of damage here or there. And Abyss doesn't really do anything. Instead, now when LORINA has over 200% effect resistance, Spiral Breakthrough has 50% defense pen. So it's going to do even more damage. And it's going to actually be useful even in PvP. Obscurity rune used to say when you use Sharp Blow, there's a 50% chance to increase your combat radius an additional 20%. So sometimes you would get like an even bigger CR push on the S1. Now, S1 just has built-in lifesteal, which is obviously insane with the Guard rune passive of not being able to take more than 35% of your max health in a single go. That's a really awesome thing to hear. And then last one, the change to the Glory rune. It used to give 20% extra damage versus elite and boss monsters. Just straight up gives an extra 20% period. Yeah, I don't think it's going to wreck the PV usage of the character, but like, oh man, if you could get this character with 200 ER by playing her, like, I think she's just going to go to the moon. Like, Destro Pen, LORINA, or like maybe Destro Immunity, LORINA. I think it's going to go crazy in PvE. Probably going to have to build her base speed, decent amount of damage on her. I think you'll probably be fine. Like, the lifesteal, the dual attack chance, and the 35% damage prevention seems like it will be enough to actually get her there. But it remains to be seen. Let's see what happens. Like, I'm probably going to definitely be trying to build LORINA for whenever this patch goes live. All right, let's talk about the rest of the specialty changes that are in this patch. There's 3 more. First up is Carrot. S1 no longer slows. Instead, it has a burn effect on it, and then it will detonate that burn at the end of the turn. Decent change for a character that's trying to use burns in the current state of the game. Flame Barrier now not only burns the target that actually attacks her and gives her a barrier, but also gives her an increased attack buff, which is good, obviously, with burns. Higher base attack, even with the buffs, means bigger burns, more powerful, more impactful detonations. And then the S3, Flame Spurt or Blaze Explosion, based on whether or not you are the specialty change or the base version. It's going to dispel 2 buffs now, as opposed to 1 like it has in the past. And then the Faith rune is now having the chance of burn increased, as opposed to the chance of speed down being increased. So yeah, Some nifty changes for Carrot. Still going to be good in the same spots as PvE. Nothing like super amazing. Nothing really to write home about. After that, we have Mercenary Helga, increasing the defense break chance on the basic attack here. And also the Sun Rune. It now has the condition of as long as Helga's health is over 50% at the start of a turn, she will get the critical hit chance bump as opposed to over 70% in the past. And then lastly, Wedge Rune. When using attack chain if all allies are of the earth element, increases the effect chance of her defense break by another 25%, giving her essentially 100% defense break as long as your whole team is green. Still going to be all right for expeditions. I don't think she's really the best in slot option. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tristan, but she's decent there, decent in Ancient Inheritance. These just kind of smooth over her actual use cases. They're fine. I don't think they're anything like super amazing, anything really to write home about. This last one, though, is for Christy. This one is worth writing a home about, and I would just dread the fact that Eat the Bread is just going to be playing this character all the time. It's going to be for Christy and Silvertide Christy. Previously, the character in the back slot would get half of Christy's effect resistance applied to them at the start of battle, which will allow you to get like essentially an extra like 100, 150 effect resistance. Now it gives the full value of Christy's effect resistance to the back slot character, meaning like 500 effect resistance disciplinary prefect Arias are on the table. That just sounds absolutely miserable to play against, but hey, I guess control players had it coming. S3 also is getting a little bit of extra healing, and the guard rune is making it so that the damage share that Christy has with the person in the back slot is increased to 30% as opposed to 20%. Overall, very good set of changes in order to kind of combat some of the control characters in the current state of the game. Let's wrap up by talking about the two artifacts now. Draco Plate, this is Luna's artifact. It is going from 16% damage reduction when hitting, being hit by a critical hit. Their exact words here. When suffering a critical hit grants an extra 60% damage reduction. It is now being changed to 30% damage reduction when being hit by a critical hit. Cool, I guess. It doesn't really increase the use cases, in my opinion, honestly. Like, this was already the most mid artifact on Warrior. You played it if there was nothing else to take. And an extra 14% damage reduction for critical hits doesn't really inspire confidence. I wish we got like a little bit more damage, or a little bit something else to go with it. Like maybe, who knows, that extra critical hit damage reduction does make certain characters survive, but I don't think it's really all that exciting. I think this other one, Unfading Memories, this change to Diane's artifact is a little bit more exciting. So before, Unfading Memories used to give 25 effect resistance to the user, and whenever the user used a non-attack skill, it would heal allies for 10% of their max health. They have changed it so that now the effect resistance is 20%, but it applies to everyone on your team, effectively making it like a Shamadra Staff, like a different version of Shamadra Staff, giving you a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more choice in your artifacts for characters like, say, a Ram, or Destina, or Maid Chloe, right? Because those would obviously want to play it. If you're going an ER build, you'd want to play it for the increased effect resistance to all allies. That's a very, very important passive. But now you can kind of pick and choose. Like, I want bigger burst heals with the Shamadra Staff, or you could have the new effect on Unfading Memories, which is at the start of the turn, recovers health of all allies by 4 to 8% based on artifact level. So if you've got a plus 30 on Fading Memories, this is just going to generate a lot of passive healing, allow you to use the rest of your kit, not necessarily hard focus on non-attack skills when you don't need to, in order to keep certain characters on your team sustained. Overall, this is a good set of changes, I feel like, for this artifact. I think it's good. I don't know if it's necessarily better than the old one, but it is definitely more interesting and might open up more build possibilities in the future, because I know not a lot of people really like Unfading Memories. I think it's one of the best Soul Weaver artifacts in the game. I know Valky is a big fan of it as well, but it's not like elite, like Guardian Ice Crystals or like Soul of Consolation. And maybe this makes it a little bit more generically usable and kind of pushes it in those upper echelons of the Soul Weaver tier list, the Soul Weaver artifact tier list. And yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts on everything in the balance patch. Overall, I think it's a good patch. I know people have been saying it isn't really all that great. I think there's some pretty exciting stuff in here. I think Fumira is pretty good. I think Little Queen Charlotte's good. Maid Chloe is good. There's a lot to like here in this patch. It's not the best patch ever, but it is certainly one of the better ones, at least in my opinion. But, you know, I'm just one guy on the internet. Let me know down in the comment section below how you all feel about today's balance patch. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Later now.